Hello, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Chuck Hardwick Jr. interviewing his dad, Chuck Hardwick Sr. via Zoom. And today is episode 4, and today is Thursday, April the 16th, 2020. My dad is in his living room in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and I'm coming at you from the Ocean Beach neighborhood of San Diego. How are you today, Dad? It's good to see you.
We're all doing fine, Chuck. Hope you and Helen are too.
We're doing great. Thank you so much. Everything considered. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be covering the time in your life from approximately the summer of '56 until right around March of 1959 in Akron, Ohio. But before we get started with that, give us an update on what's going on, in your opinion, in terms of the pandemic and how that's affecting your life personally.
Well, as I've said before, it's been both stressful and restful. It's enabled me to get a lot of things done, including working with you on these interviews, projects like this. I am really worried, though. I am worried not just about getting the virus for myself or my family. I'm really worried about the long-term impact this is going to have. I had lunch yesterday at a huge distance between us with a friend who's very active in the arts in New York City. And we're talking about where does the theater business go in the future? I mean, and Broadway is just such a hub and tourist attraction for New York City. And will it recover? And I was thinking of the opera. You know, I was on the board of the Palm Beach Opera and used to be a fan of the Metropolitan Opera. Opera is just going to be crushed. Opera is having financial problems to begin with, and not only are they going to lose this year's revenues, but they're going to be closed down for a while, and how are they going to perform going forward? So this profound impact on our lives, as well as the huge debt to be repaid somewhere down the road, $4 trillion more or $6 trillion more added to the national debt is a lot of money. And I don't get much good information watching what goes on TV. I've spoken before about the fights between Trump and the media. Frankly, I no longer like CNN or Fox News. They both it's so polarized. You know, where do you go for the truth? What is the truth? I don't know, but it's bothering me.
Well, you and I have talked about C-SPAN. Maybe watch C-SPAN because it's less commentary and it's just more of the raw footage.
You're absolutely right. C-SPAN it is what it is, and you can draw your own conclusions. And I don't need the announcers either extreme telling me what it all means. But back to what it's affecting us. I saw a cartoon of a woman, very shapely, and it said before the virus, and she looked really great in the kitchen. And it said 31 days later, and she was all swollen up and gained a lot of weight. You know, so I don't feel so bad with the few pounds that I have gained. And I am now walking 2 miles today, 14 miles last week, and I'm keeping that up. So we're doing okay while worried about the virus and worried about the long-term impact. Oh, one other point, in Palm Beach, and I guess elsewhere in Florida, but in Palm Beach Gardens and the county, the state now has free testing, and you don't have to have a symptom. So they're trying to collect data on the prevalence of the infection that people don't even know about. So if you be totally asymptomatic and can have the virus, they're trying to draw statistics. Well, okay, how often is this occurring? How many people look fine, feel fine, but are carrying the virus? So that's kind of interesting. I haven't been tested. No one in our family has yet, but it's a good thing that they're doing. I think that data would be important.
Awesome. So tell us, I know you like to read a lot. What have you been reading? Any interesting books lately?
I've been both reading and listening to books. I've been listening to The Life of Samuel Johnson, which is very interesting. He was the most famous author. He wrote the first dictionary of the English language in England in the 1770s. And so many of his observations there are still applicable today. And he didn't like Americans because we didn't want to pay our taxes to the king. It was interesting to hear the other side of that point of view. One book I'm enjoying is The American Way of Empire, which was a gift from Mark Risk, Ginger's boyfriend. It's a very good analysis of a lot of things going on, including the growth of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is an organization that I was somewhat active in when I was working for Pfizer. So a lot of good book listening and some fiction thrown in there as well as political and historical nonfiction. So yeah, it's been one of the pluses of this experience.
Well, that's really interesting. So let's pivot a little bit and get in our DeLorean time machine, and we're going to transport ourselves to Akron, Ohio in the summer of 1956. And tell us, what was it like in Akron, Ohio back in the day?
Well, that was between the 9th and 10th grade. I left West Junior High and would be enrolling in Central High as a sophomore. But life was good. The economy was good. There was a recession towards the end, I think 58 or 59, called the Eisenhower recession. But Akron was the rubber capital of the world. Lots of jobs. And almost everyone you knew worked for one of the rubber companies in one way or another. Goodyear, Firestone, Goodrich, Strybeling, and others all had their headquarters in Akron. Television was very popular. It caught on. It was growing. Even we had a television set in the late 1950s. And all of America would come together, much as we are coming together now in the pandemic. We came together then for I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver and Gunsmoke and other fun shows. Because there were only 3 networks at the time to speak of. It was pretty good for our family too. My dad had paid off his debt from his restaurant, the money he borrowed. He was always eligible to declare bankruptcy, but he didn't think that was the right thing to do. Unlike some political leaders that we won't mention today, that was insisting on paying off every debt, every dollar he ever owed. And so we were living better. We moved around the corner to a bigger house. Of course, we rented. And along the porch, I got my first bedroom, my own bedroom then. We were active at the First Methodist Church, where Fanny and Dillard were very active and very big supporters. I went to Sunday school and Methodist Youth Fellowship. I met some nice kids there. So all in all, it was a pretty good family life. And about that time, I think it was 56, Fanny Dillard moved to Akron. And that was really great. They bought a little, what's called a starter home. For while they rented, they bought a starter home on Ada Street over in Firestone Park. Nice little house. Probably had, I remember the living room and the kitchen and the eating area, and probably 3 bedrooms. I don't remember exactly. At about that time, Dillard was working for Firestone. He gifted me a membership to the YMCA, which I absolutely loved, playing basketball and ping pong, and they had a swimming pool, an indoor swimming pool, of course. So we're really starting to come together. Joe spent a lot of time with David and me when David was home for the summers, and then later on, David and Rosie moved to Akron. But at the early point, they were not yet living there, is my recollection. And in fact, I think there's a picture of David and me at the golf course. Do you have that handy?
I do. Let me show that on the screen real quick, and we'll check it out. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, there it is. We used to go golfing. It was a public course, of course. And I'm sure we used, if you see the golf clubs, or exactly what we use today. On our country club today, you have to wear a shirt with a collar. So we didn't have, I guess, appropriate golf attire on. Didn't even know there was such a thing back then. The main thing was the 3 brothers out together having a good time, and Joe was always so generous, always wanting to do something with us. So it was really a lot.
This is around 1956, and you were about to start your sophomore year. Did I get that about right?
Yes, I went to my sophomore, junior, and senior years to Akron. In fact, that was the time when I turned 16. That I guess it was my junior year. I believe it was my junior early on. I took driver's education. A lot of schools don't do that anymore, but we did. We had it. Taught us how to drive. And Joe and Dylan, Fanny, and later on, my stepbrother Don were very generous in loaning me their cars to drive. I really had a good time. Those were good years. I still had my paper route, so I had pocket money. In fact, then went to Central High School, known as the Wildcats. And I think you have a copy of our 1959 yearbook. Yeah, there it is.
Wow, that's amazing. You held on to that yearbook for quite some time. You've moved many, many times. I see there's a little bit of tape on it, but kudos to you just for holding on to that book for so long.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I've lost a lot of old pictures that I went through to pull this together. But one of the things, maybe let's go through the yearbook a little bit, and we'll talk about some of the people who were in there. Well, that woman, you know.
I do. That's my mom.
That is your mother. Do you want to read what it says there?
Yeah. So the description says Patricia Ruth Johnson, Patty, Homecoming Court, May Court, NHS, which I think is the National Honor Society,
Right.
Quill and Scroll, whatever that means, Citizen of Month winner, Voice of Democracy contest. Wow, she was a good citizen. Cheerleader captain. Wow, that's impressive. Student council. Forge, I'm not sure what that is. Senior dramatic secretary. Latin secretary treasurer. Megaphone. Squire and Scroll. C Club. Does that stand for Central High School? The C Club?
Yep. There's a women's letter, right?
And then forum, not sure what that is. Senior choir. Plans on Berea College. Wow, that's interesting. Social service work, and Chuck. Wow, that's really interesting. So can you fill us in on, do you remember some of these things? Like what was Quill and Scroll or Forge or some of these other things?
Forge was the school newspaper, and Pat was very active in that. In fact, between our junior and senior year, she went away to Northwestern University for a period to study a program on journalism for high school students. The Forum Club was a discussion group on weighty issues at the time that students who had an interest in that kind of thing met with Mr. Nick, who was a great social studies teacher. And Berea College, of course, is where David went and Fanny went and Dillard went and Rosie went. So I'm sure I was talking up Berea to Pat, and I was potentially a candidate to go to Berea myself.
Interesting. So let's talk about this next photo, baseball letterman. Who are these guys?
Well, that was the junior year guys who got a letter in baseball. And to my right there with the big smile is Phil Pagano. He and I were good friends. He went to the Methodist Church, and we played basketball a lot at the time, as well as baseball. And we were really good buddies. And then that's Coach Maligio there in the sort of the center, Edgel Groves at the back row with a big smile. And the other guys I don't remember as well, but I pitched in the Teener League, which was in the summer before I went to the Central High School. And that was really good baseball, sponsored by the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Pitching was fun. I played the infield some, played first base for a while because my Aunt Stella had bought me on one of my visits to Somerset a baseball glove, and it happened to be a first baseman's mitt. So since that's the glove I had, I played first base for a while. And it's also worked as a catcher's mitt because it was a big, first baseman's mitt was a big mitt. But that was a lot of fun.
So tell me what sort of pitches you had. Did you have a fastball, a curveball, a changeup? How did you get people out?
Well, I had what I call the fastball. I doubt that it was very fast, but it worked pretty well at the time. And I had a curveball, which they always caution young kids not to throw so much, saying it would hurt your arms. And maybe then you wouldn't make the big leagues if you hurt your arms as a little league player or a teenage player. And the main thing was try to get the ball over the plate. I remember one game, we lost the game and I pitched. I think our games were 7 innings, 6 or 7. And in the event, I could still see the manager. We had us at practice, and he was kind of walking around. He's a really nice guy. He said that our last game, Chuck struck out 2 batters every inning, and we lost the game. He said, you guys committed 7 errors, and you know how those runs scored, and it went on. And I don't remember the score of the game or anything. I do remember that little speech that he gave. So it was really a lot of fun. And there's nothing like playing a sport to make you really a fan of that sport then when you get into later years, because you know more about it and you can empathize better with people who are doing it and you understand it better. So those are really good memories.
So have you stayed in touch with Phil Pagano?
No, I haven't. In fact, somehow I got his email once, and I got his email and I lost track of him. Unfortunately, that happens over the years at times.
Gotcha. All right, let's move along. And so tell us about this next photo here.
Well, I was on the basketball team, mostly on there to keep the bench warm and help the average grade point average of the team. But it was a lot of fun. In my junior year, I had quit my paper route and really threw myself into school activities and made the reserve starting team for the reserve team. And then this is from the senior year when I made the varsity team. I didn't play very much, but I enjoyed being part of the team. It was a championship team. We were undefeated until we got into the regional playoffs, which we lost narrowly. We played over at Kent State University Gymnasium, and then that ended the season. But we were the city champions. Look back at the scores, which I saw in the yearbook when I got it out. Central quite often had twice the score. It would be like 60 to 30, 75 to 35, those kinds of scores over the other high schools in Akron. Coach Stickler was a legendary coach, very well known in the city and the area. And it was just fun to be part of it, even though I was certainly not a star.
So did you have a secret weapon in basketball? Were you like a good passer or good at layups or a jump shot or 3-point shot, something like that?
Well, actually, the jump shot was just coming in at that time. Not many people had a jump shot. Some did. I started to develop it a little bit, but I was pretty good from shooting from the outside. I could shoot two-handed or one-handed push shots. Pretty good accuracy. Also, foul shooting was pretty important back then. They had 1+1. You made the first one, you got another one, and the scores were a lot lower back then than they tended to be later on. But we were taught to shoot foul shots underhanded. We threw the ball up like that with two hands to ease it in rather than the one-hand shot. I don't know whatever happened to the underhand foul shooting. Most of the people watching this probably never heard of what I'm talking about. But that was in the old days how we were taught to shoot foul shots. It seemed to work pretty well.
Wow, it's so interesting. All right, let's move along and tell us about this next slide, or do you want me to read the description here?
Well, I guess it's a nice big picture. Most people can read it. That student council president, that was an election held school-wide. The 10th, 11th, and 12th grades voted on it, and you were the representative of the school, and whoever ran for that and came in second then was the class president. I won that election really because of the work that your mother did. She energized the Frankfurter's classes, because that was a school she'd gone through, the grade school. And as they came into Central, she somehow got them to vote for me. Don't get stuck, vote for Chuck. I do remember that. But I was pretty active, basketball, baseball, cross country you had to run if you wanted to play basketball because they put you in shape. I also was a sole member of the radio staff. The radio staff was my job of reading the announcements over the loudspeaker throughout the school before school started every day. And you could see law, politics, then Mary likes Patty Johnson, Phil Piano, cross country, and food. That was senior high.
That's very impressive. So many activities. All right, let's move along and take a look at this next photo. Tell us about the radio staff.
Well, that was what I was just referring to. It was a lot of fun, and also I was by the result of doing this, I was able to go down and be on the real radio in the city. They had a public radio station of sorts, and the students were allowed to come down. They had plays and things put on the radio, and I went down, and that was a lot of fun. So it sort of piqued my interest in broadcasting, but which I never really did. But it was fun being on the real radio in addition to reading these announcements.
Interesting. So now let's talk about some of your classmates. Tell us a little bit about Wally Harper.
Wally Harper was a musical genius. He went on to big things in New York. He wrote the music and arrangements for a number of Broadway shows and off-Broadway shows. And then he entered into a 30-year collaboration with this female singer who had been a big Broadway star, and she was semi-retired. She had been in Carousel, named Barbara Cook. And the two of them did great things. The last thing I used to see Wally on public television, saw him in supper clubs. Pat and I saw him with Barbara a few times. And the last thing I saw about him is I was in London on the West End, and Sheila and I were going through town, and there was a big poster posted saying, Wally Harper and Barbara Cook coming soon. And I said, oh yeah, that's Wally. Great guy. Unfortunately, he died during the AIDS epidemic at an early age, and it was a loss. Well, one of the things he did, he wrote our high school play, Let Me Tell You was the name of the play. And prior to that, Wally, your mother, a woman named Janet Wynn and I remember did a radio program called The Snow Goose. Janet Wynn, who was a very talented, very smart woman, went on to be from Ohio State to get a PhD in performing arts and the dance, and had quite a career out west, I think in the state of Oregon, where she moved and taught, was a professor, department head at the university out there, and passed away at an early age from cancer when she was 63. So Wally was quite a guy, and we had a lot of fun, very creative.
All right. And then you had another very interesting classmate. Tell us about Nate Thurman.
Nate Thurman was probably the most famous of the classmates. He was kind of a gangly, tall, very thin basketball player. He was one of the two centers on the team. And he ended up going to Bowling Green University, where he was an All-American and later became a professional basketball player. Played for a number of teams for like 12 years and ended up his career in San Francisco, where he also had a series of barbecue restaurants. When I ran for governor, there was a reporter for the Bergen Record who wanted to dig into everything. So he had my resume, and he called Ben Akron, and I know he talked to Coach Siegfried. Said, Chuck Hardwick, you remember him? Yeah. He said he played on the basketball team. Yes, he did, etc. And he called Nate Thurman. He tracked Nate Thurman down and said, one of your high school mates is running for governor of New Jersey. Do you remember him? And he said, Chuck Hardwick, yeah. Wasn't he some kind of a brain? So clearly he had me confused with someone else. And he said, well, I wish him luck. For a fairly small school, a fairly small high school, we had quite a few prominent people and successful people come out of it.
You really did. So tell us a little bit about this next photo that I just put on the screen.
Oh, that's a beautiful picture. That's Fanny and the cheerleading group and the majorettes behind her from Somerset High. Came across that picture after I'd already covered Somerset, but I thought that it was worth sharing. Before we go to the next picture, I wanted to back up on something that I should have mentioned that I didn't, and that was the fact of David and Rosie getting married. He came to Akron. David had been in medical school at the University of Louisville, very competitive, hard to get in there, and he didn't really like it. And after a few months, I guess it was like around December or so, he decided to drop out. And the school urged him to say, this slot is going to be unfilled. But David went on to have a wonderful career. Got his doctorate degree in education from Ohio State University, became superintendent of school, was a terrific chemistry teacher in Colga Falls. But one of the things I've always wondered about, I never had a chance to ask David, it's probably too late now, was he well received by the other students? Remember back then, all the medical students were white men or boys. Most of their fathers were doctors. And I'm sure David didn't have the clothing, the car to drive. And they were probably cliquish. And I wonder if he had trouble really feeling like that, that he could fit in and enjoy that. I don't know. We'll never know. I've often wondered about that. So that was a period when I first went to Central High School, when I had my first girlfriend, Linda Meadows. Really, we started dating in the 9th grade, and she was from St. Vincent's, which was the school right where we lived, across the street, actually. And she and I were going steady at the time for a couple of years, and she was really a sweet girl. But then finally, with me at Central and her going on to St. Vincent's, then I met Pat and started dating her. But 30 years later, I was at Giant Stadium at a football game with your mother, with Pat. And seated in front of me, I said, gosh, that sure looks like Linda Meadows. And finally, I tapped her on the right shoulder, and she turned around and I said, are you Linda Meadows? She said, oh, Chuck Hardwick. So it was really interesting to see her 30 years later. She was there with her husband, and we saw them in a few other football games, and they were living on Long Island at the time. So it was a lot of fun in those days.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I think, yeah, this is the last photo that you sent me. Tell us about this photo. That looks like some kind of a birthday party.
Well, it was. You'll see Fanny there in the black with the pearls, and that's me holding Dill Jr., who I guess the whole family called Brucey at the time. It was Dillard Bruce, felt was his name. And over my right shoulder, looking at the goings on of Brucey blowing out the candles, is your mother, and then other friends. And then over in the right-hand corner of the picture, just barely half of his head there, is Phil Pagano, who I talked about earlier, who was a good friend. Pat and Fanny planned the birthday party. It was my 17th birthday, and I remember it was a lot of fun. Pat gave me a gray turtleneck sweater that I wore for years. It's gone now, but it was a big occasion.
Well, fantastic. Well, I see we're about out of time for this episode. This has been really fun. Thank you for sending me all those photos and explaining in detail. I really enjoy hearing about all of these memories that you have, great memories from Akron. Do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off for today?
Not really. I think that I know everyone's hunkering down about the virus in the time. If this video stays around for a long time and people look back and they actually want to see maybe great-grandchildren or something like that, I think it's good to let them know what we did during the pandemic, because they will not remember it and can't relate to it very much. And I appreciate, Chuck, your expertise working Zoom and making all of this happen. And the next episode that we discussed will be a very difficult one in many ways, but it turned out pretty good. And that was the unexpected marriage of Pat and me during the end of our senior year in high school. So I'll talk about that.
All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you about that on the next episode. And thanks for your time today, Dad. I loved hearing all the old stories and seeing the great photos.
Thank you, Chuck. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good day. Take care.
Love you a lot.
Love you too.